All right, Bruce Linton, Canopy Growth CEO, co-founder. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, great place.
I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. I want to first ask about the announcement last month. Canopy announced that you guys are investing $100 to $150 million into hemp production in New York State. Senator Schumer was very excited about that. He kind of broke the news on it. I want to ask, though, what exactly is the strategy around hemp, and what is going to happen down the road in terms of building that operation out?
Yes, well, sort of frame it, right? So there's been lots of eyes on two things happening at the federal level here. One was the Farm Bill about hemp becoming an available source of CBD. And then the other is still states' right about what will happen with marijuana, will it govern? But on the first one, when it got passed, what it meant is that people can produce hemp. They don't have to have a special license, that the hemp can then go to somewhere like Canopy's Hemp Industrial Park, and it can be processed for what's in there. And what's in there could be protein, it could be fiber, and it can be hemp oil or CBD. And so what you need to then have is a network of parties who want to use all of the plant to get maximum value. And the reason we're doing it first in New York State is that Como and the state regulators actually stepped forward and said, we're going to put forward a New York platform. And we're going to actually look for science, we're going to look for evidence, we're going to look for products that are done in a proper way. We don't want a bunch of false claims, and we want scale. And so for Canopy, it gave us a platform where we could actually enter where it's not federally illegal, because marijuana, even if you like it or don't, it's still got that. And when we then started looking in the state, the way we like to locate our businesses is we want to be where we can get a building that's not super costly, have a bunch of people that are underemployed, maybe by both salary and job type, and have a bunch of infrastructure that isn't used, which really means we want to be where someone used to be and a business left. And regrettably, there are chunks of New York State, particularly the southern tier area, which have a lot of that. And so when you occupy those, you're both welcomed and smart.
$100 to $150 million is a lot of money. But based on the fact that you've been working with a bunch of hemp advocates, the chairman of the National Hemp Association, in terms of actually building that out now beyond New York State, are there other states that will follow, and how much money are you actually expecting to pour into hemp?
Yeah, so we'll do it state by state right now, because what has to happen is the state needs to regulate what is permissible for CBD. Otherwise, it cascades to the federal, and we need to have more evidence to meet what the FDA wants, which we're working on. And so we'll probably have 3 or 4 states that have big populations and progressive leadership who want to have hemp become part of their actual job creation industrial platform. So you can look around and you can probably guess, like New York's a good one, and there's 2 or 3 others that aren't really totally captivated by marijuana, but hemp might be their entry. And so before you know it, you might spend $500 million. But if you do it right, what you end up having is the first or the most reliably created products that if people wanted to get them, they know what they're getting, they can get the same thing again, there's no false claims. And so we think that there's a big consumer segment. And you can picture in your mind, you may be saying CBD, good, I like it in my coffee, because that appears to be a thing. But what you might actually want to know is how much, how often, if it's a sports recovery drink.
Could you see that side of the business eventually outscale the marijuana side of the business?
No, because CBD is important, but it's really associated with a sort of a health and wellness. THC is a really powerful part of a total solution. So if you take away the THC and say it can only be CBD, I think you're robbing the opportunity to manage other symptoms like sleep, like pain. And so there's a lot of therapeutic benefit to THC. It's not just for the party. And it's very popular to say CBD.
It's hot right now.
Right, but what you really should say is want to sleep. Want to, have less particular pain, and let the experts define the methods of using various parts of the plants to achieve that. Right now, it's just cool to say CBD.
Well, you mentioned beverages, and I want to hit on that because Constellation Brands, obviously putting $4 billion into your company was a big investment, and you guys are kind of in a race with Tilray and some of these other companies to produce beverages that have cannabis-infused products. But in terms of the way that all went down, it's interesting to see. I interviewed Brendan Kennedy, Tilray CEO, and he mentioned that he was happy that he still has control of his own destiny, that he didn't give up so much of a stake in his company. What would you say to kind of the way that your relationship with Constellation Brands is played?
Well, so I've done 16 rounds of finance in order to create a company with a 20-ish billion market cap. you no longer have control after you do 4 rounds of finance. And so what you have to intellectually shift to is, are we going to be globally dominant? And I don't think there's any debate that the #1 company in every regard, from platform of production to scientists to patents to digging the best moat for the future, is us. All these things you have to start early so you finish strong. We've been at it 4 years. On May 1st, we'll have a building that's about 197,000 square feet, and we'll then be able to house 5 bottling lines. About 3 or 4 months after May 1st, the lines will be running, and they'll be producing beverages, which mean when the regs in Canada permit stores to be filled up, there's one place you can actually get cannabis beverages from that will be amazing, and it'll be Canopy. And I don't say you get the biggest reward for moving first, but I've seen a lot of penalties for not being first.
But you've also built this company up too, right? We talk about entrepreneurs all the time. This is your baby. This is yours, right? So I mean, they have roughly a 40% stake right now. Is there a price where you might see Constellation Brands taking control? So
we structured a way that they can get to about 45%.
Yeah.
And then if they want to take all of it, what they have to do is buy on an instrument that gives all the shareholders a lot of potential upside. And so these things can happen, but ultimately, if you look at what we're doing, and we're in 16 or 17 countries now, we have a ton of research going on, we have a whole open slate of what we get to make. It's not unthinkable that this little thing called Canopy, before it has its 8th or 9th birthday, could actually be 2 or 3 times more valuable than it is today. 3 years ago, when our market cap was 1/23 of its current market cap, and I told you, in 3 years, we will be 23 times more valuable. You would have thought, that man, he's not quite right. So when I sit here today and say 2 or 3 times, not 23 times, that's not kind of sounding wonky, is it?
No, but I mean, I also love the confidence here too. At the Cantech conference, you said, my goal is that I should make our business a lot larger and more successful than theirs, and then maybe I become the chairman.
Yeah, well, so like, think about it. Right now, I don't understand why everybody isn't buying Constellation stock. They own 37% of us, and their stock traded down since they put the money in to almost make that free inside of a great business that sells Corona and all the wines that you want. So like, when I look at it, that is a wicked business. But what I've tried to make sure what we're creating in Canopy is a global exposure, recognizing prohibition has made it such that if you're the first to figure out how to scale, capture ingredient value, create medical outcomes and awesome recreational products, there's about a $500 billion annual market. And if you're first, does that mean you're getting like 1%, 20%? It just, by the logic of the opportunity and the advancement that we're making, says that this should be a gigantic company. Now, what you have to do is not put a bunch of time on bragging, but put a lot of work in executing, which is kind of why our culture works and why we're #1, because we don't celebrate getting anything done. We just go to the next topic.
Last question for you in terms of all this, because we've seen so much attention given to the cannabis names in terms of it's a bubble, right? And I mean, just looking at your stock, it's up 68% in the first month of 2019, and I don't want to say that's a bubble because we've seen things happen like that before, but in terms of what you're thinking, you're talking about the opportunity here. What do you say to bubble?
Well, I think it's entirely true that cannabis has become frothy. And I'm not saying that necessarily specifically about ours, but you could list 85 or 90 companies that are probably publicly listed that I, as the operator of one of the first and the most dominant, have never heard of those companies. And what's going to happen is, I think you're going to find the bubbles break with the small ones first, because there's not actually a probability that they're going to put $1 billion of revenue up, or that they're going to have a major scientific breakthrough, or that they're going to have a 30% market share. And so the problem is, retail investors hear marijuana and they think that those must be all good stocks, and then they look at it and say, well, that one's only priced at $2 a share. I like $2 stocks. They don't look at how many shares are outstanding. And so people may find themselves not in a great spot if they don't pick. So you're going to have to make investments in things like Canopy, and then decide how much of your money do you want to bet on the other ones.